Most people do not lose their day at 3 p.m. They lose it in the first 10 minutes after waking up. That is the real problem. They wake up, grab the phone, check messages, scroll a little, answer something small, react to 5 different people, and before the day has even started, their brain is already scattered. Then they sit down to do real work and wonder why focus feels weak, why motivation feels fake, and why everything important suddenly feels harder than it should. So here is the shift. No phone, no input, just output. That is the rule. If you want a sharper brain, stop giving your best mental energy to the easiest thing in the room. The opening habit in this script is simple because real life has to be simple. You wake up, sit down, skip the inbox, ignore the scroll, set one timer, and go straight into the hardest mental task of the day. Not the easy task, not the admin, not the fake productive stuff, the real thing. That matters because your brain has a peak window, and most people waste it. They spend their freshest hour reacting instead of building. So protect the first block. One timer, one hard task, no phone, no inbox. If 90 minutes feels impossible, do 30. Same rule. Because the win is not the number. The win is protecting your best attention before the world starts chewing through it. And the payoff is immediate. By noon, you are no longer carrying that background stress of, I still have not done the thing that matters. You already did it. That changes your confidence, your momentum, your stress for the rest of the day. Because real momentum does not come from being busy early. It comes from winning early. Comment block if you're doing a no-phone first block tomorrow. And here is where most people waste the first win of the day. They finish one hard block. Then sit there too long and watch their brain go flat. That is the mistake. They stay in the chair. Keep staring at the screen, push through the fog. Try to squeeze one more good hour out of a brain that is already cooked. They call that discipline. Usually, it is just bad timing. Because after deep work, your brain does not need more effort. It needs a state change. That is why the next habit matters so much after your first focus block walk. Not a workout, not a podcast walk, not a phone call, just a walk. 10 minutes is enough, 20 is even better. No headphones, no scrolling, no extra input, just movement and a little space. It feels almost pointless until you try it once. Because this is what real life looks like. You sit at your desk, trying to force one more answer, one more paragraph, one more decision, and nothing clicks. Then you get up, walk outside, pace around the block, stand in the sun for a minute, and suddenly, the idea that felt impossible shows up on its own. That is not luck. Your brain changed state. Walking after hard mental work often helps people feel less mentally jammed, less stressed, and more able to think clearly again. Instead of dragging the first session into a slow, useless second session, you give the brain a reset it can actually use. So make the rules simple. First block, hard task. Second move, walk. That is the sequence. Because the goal is not to prove you can stay seated the longest. The goal is to come back better than you left. Win early, reset clean, come back sharp. That is how the second half of your day stops feeling like mental leftovers from the first. And here is where a lot of people destroy the second half of their day. They do a strong first block, take the walk, then eat a lunch that knocks their brain out. That is the trap. They grab something greasy, heavy, fast, and easy. Eat it while scrolling. Barely taste it. Then wonder why 2 p.m. feels like mental death. That is not a motivation problem. That is a fuel problem. Because if your lunch leaves you sleepy, foggy, and overstimulated, your afternoon focus is already losing before it starts. That is why the next habit matters. Eat in a way that helps your brain stay clear. Not perfect, not Instagram healthy, just cleaner. Think simple salmon or another solid protein, berries or fruit, something light, something that does not make you want to lie down an hour later. The original script uses a very specific example for a reason: salmon, blueberries, even a small piece of dark chocolate. Not because there is magic in one meal, but because the goal is mental clarity, not a food coma. And there is a second part people miss: how you eat matters too. Because a lot of people are not just eating lunch. They are eating plus scrolling, eating plus texting, eating plus emails, eating plus bad news. Now the meal is not a reset. It is just more noise. So make the rule simple. No phone, no feed, just food. 10 quiet minutes if that is all you have. That alone changes a lot. You actually taste the meal. You slow down. Your body gets a cleaner signal. And your brain gets a real break instead of one more layer of input. That is the shift. Your lunch is not supposed to be something you survive. It is supposed to help you come back online, because the goal is not just to get through the morning. It is to still have a brain by the afternoon. And if you know, lunch is the thing wrecking your focus, comment 1 below. And here is where a lot of people lose the entire afternoon. They do a strong first block, take the walk, eat a decent lunch, and then hand their brain right back to the algorithm. That is the trade they are making without noticing. 1 notification, 1 quick check. 1 scroll while standing in the kitchen. 1 just for a second on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, email, whatever your thing is. And after that, the brain is no longer looking for depth. It is looking for the next hit. That is what happens every afternoon to a lot of people. The work feels slower. The room feels quieter. Your attention gets itchy. You keep checking things that do not matter because your brain just got reminded how much easier novelty feels than thinking. So the fix has to be concrete. Phone in another room. Do not disturb for 60 to 90 minutes. No phone at the desk. No phone in the kitchen. Those last 2 are the easiest zones to protect, and they change more than people expect. Then give yourself only 2 check windows for the afternoon. For example, 1, 2, 3, 0, and 5, 3, 0. That is enough. Because the goal is not to become a monk. It is to stop asking your brain to ignore temptation every 30 seconds. A rule beats a negotiation. And once the interruptions stop, something important comes back online. Longer thoughts, cleaner problem solving, better memory, real silence. That is the shift. Not more effort, less interference. Because sometimes the smartest thing you can do for your brain is not add 1 more productivity trick. It is remove the thing that keeps resetting your attention before it ever gets deep enough to matter. And once you stop handing your attention back to the algorithm every afternoon, the next move is not to do nothing. It is to feed your brain something better. Because here is the mistake a lot of people make: they cut the noise. Then they go straight back to another kind of empty input. More scrolling, more passive watching, more random content that feels stimulating, but leaves the brain flatter than before. That is where this next habit matters. Replace cheap stimulation with real curiosity. Not a productivity book you force yourself to read. Not content you think you should consume. Something you are actually curious about. A strange documentary. A random Wikipedia question. A story. A podcast episode about something you know nothing about. Why cats purr. How memory works. Where money came from. Anything that makes your brain lean forward instead of zoning out. That shift is bigger than it looks. Because curiosity hits the reward system too, but in a cleaner way. It pulls your mind into learning, instead of hijacking it with speed and novelty. And when you get genuinely curious, the brain tends to remember better, think wider, and stay more mentally alive. That is why the original routine puts curiosity hour after the digital fast, not more noise but better stimulation. You can feel the difference in real life. After 20 minutes of doom scrolling, your mind feels full and empty at the same time. After 20 minutes of real curiosity, your mind feels awake. That is the contrast. One makes you more passive. The other makes you more interested. And interested brains learn faster. So treat curiosity like mental cardio. Not because you need more information, because you need a brain that still likes learning. That is the real win. Not just protecting focus, expanding it. And once that is in place, the next habit gets even harder and even more powerful because it teaches your brain how to stay calm inside discomfort, not just inside calm. And once your brain starts craving cleaner stimulation instead of endless noise, the next habit does something even more important. It teaches your system how to stay steady inside discomfort. Because that is where a lot of people still break. They can focus when things are quiet. They can think when the room is calm. They can feel disciplined when everything is easy. But the second something feels uncomfortable, they want out. That is why this next habit hits so hard: end the shower cold. Not ice bath influencer nonsense. Not 10 minutes of suffering for social media. Just a short cold finish. 30 seconds, maybe 60. Enough to make your body react, but not enough to turn the whole thing into drama. Why does that matter? Because cold changes the state fast. Your breathing wants to speed up, your body wants to tense, your mind wants to escape, and right there, you get a rep stay calm anyway. That is the point. Short cold exposure can increase alertness and mood, and many people report feeling more awake and mentally sharp right after. The script also ties it to mental resilience. The brain learns that discomfort is not danger, which can carry over into ordinary life when stress shows up. And you can feel that outside the shower too. A hard email, an awkward conversation, a difficult workout. a task you want to avoid. The person who has practiced staying calm through discomfort usually handles those moments differently. Not perfectly, but better. So keep the rule simple: warm shower, cold finish. No phone, no hype, just one clean rep of I can stay here. That is why this habit belongs after curiosity. First, you teach the brain to enjoy challenge. Then you teach the body not to panic when challenge feels uncomfortable. That combination changes people because now you are not just building focus, you are building steadiness. And if you are trying the cold finish tomorrow, comment 1 below. And here is where a lot of smart, disciplined people still sabotage themselves. They spend all day building a better brain, then wreck the upgrade at night. That is the real problem. They do the deep work. They protect focus. They eat better. They even handle discomfort better. Then 10 p.m. shows up and the whole system falls apart. Bright screens, random scrolling, one more video, one more email, one more hit of stimulation right before bed. You didn't relax. You relapsed into stimulation. That is why the next habit matters so much. Protect sleep like it is part of the work, not the reward after the work, part of it. Because sleep is when the brain does a lot of rebuilding. It helps clear what it no longer needs, supports memory, and restores the mental energy you burned during the day. That is why the original routine treats sleep like something sacred, not optional. So make the last hour feel different on purpose. No bright screens in the final hour. Phone charging outside the room. Lamps low or warm. Same bedtime, give or take 30 minutes. That is the checklist. Not because it looks disciplined, because it gives your brain a real landing strip, and you can feel the difference in real life. A good night makes hard thinking feel possible again. A bad one makes everything feel heavier than it should. Same work, same brain, different recovery. That is the shift. Stop acting like sleep is what happens after the important part of the day. It is the important part. Because once your nights stop flooding your brain with chaos, everything else gets stronger the next day. Focus, mood, patience, memory, and your ability to think clearly when life gets noisy again. That is how you stop stealing from tomorrow just to survive tonight. And that is the real point of everything. You just heard. A stronger brain is not built in one dramatic moment. It is built in the quiet choices that most people keep treating like they do not matter. That is the difference. A protected first block. A walk instead of more force. Food that helps you think instead of food that knocks you out. Silence instead of endless input. Curiosity instead of passive consumption. A little discomfort on purpose. A night routine that protects recovery instead of wrecking it. None of those habits look flashy. That is exactly why they work. Because real mental strength is usually not built by intensity. It is built by rhythm. That is what most people miss. They keep waiting for some huge breakthrough. A perfect morning. A better mood. A burst of motivation. A week where life finally feels easy enough to get serious. But the brain does not change because of one inspired day. It changes because of what you keep repeating when the day is ordinary. That is the line to remember. Your brain is always adapting. The only question is to what? To distraction, to noise, to quick dopamine and half focus, or to clarity, recovery, and deeper attention, because that choice is happening, whether you notice it or not. And that should actually be good news. It means you do not need a completely different life. You need a better sequence. Win early. Reset clean. Feed the brain better. Protect silence. Train curiosity. Handle discomfort. Guard sleep. That is the system. Not a hack, not a trick. A system. And systems beat moods. That is why some people look calm, sharp, and hard to shake. It is not because life is easier for them. It is because their habits stopped working against their brain. That is what you are really building here. Not just better focus. Not just more energy. A brain that trusts your routine enough to give you its best. So, do not leave this as interesting. Make it real. Pick one habit from this video and run it for 7 days. Not all of them. 1. Because the people who actually change are usually not the ones who get the most inspired. They are the ones who repeat one good pattern long enough for it to become who they are. And if you are doing that, comment 1 and write the one habit you're starting with.